An honor to have the great Kurt Warner with us, NFL Network analyst Kurt Warner. You can see Kurt every Sunday on NFL Network, NFL Game Day morning at 9 a.m. I always spend my Sunday mornings with you, my man. We appreciate you joining us here.
We appreciate you watching with us on Sunday mornings.
All right, look, now we're going to show this tweet. You've been high on Drake Maye. And we love that around here. So what I want to do with you, we were talking off camera a little bit about the X's and O's of the game. Tell us, what do you see when you break this kid down? Because we know you love him, and you know we love him around here, Kurt.
I mean, the first thing people have to understand when I break down tape, the most important thing for me, especially with rookie quarterbacks, is are they getting their eyes in the right spot? Because that, to me, is where the position always starts, is you got to know where you start in the process, you know? And obviously there's lots of reasons for where you start, you know, the concept that you're reading, obviously the coaching that you're getting, what the defense is giving you, all of those things. But that's the first thing that I look at. And so the more a young quarterback can have his eyes in the right spot, so he's in the right starting place, obviously the more he's going to have success. But the more I look at it and go, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. And that, to me, is the biggest thing. You might miss some. I mean, you're going to miss some throws. Like every quarterback misses throws in the course of the game. You know, I've got a son that plays college football, and he'll miss 2 or 3 throws in a game, and you know, he'd call, "Dad, I played terrible," and I'm like, "You should sit down and watch NFL tape with me." Like every NFL quarterback misses 5, 6, 7 throws easy in a game. Mm-hmm. You know, like it's hard to do, and so you know, when a lot of people will look at stats and they'll look at touchdown passes and you know, they'll look at incompletions and all that stuff. I don't, you know, although that obviously plays a part, but I look at, are they going through the process the right way? Are they throwing it to the right guy? Are they seeing what they're supposed to be seeing? And then, of course, the next step is when they do that, are they getting the ball in the right manner to the right guy on a consistent basis? And so in this past game with Drake Maye, I just feel like he's really got a great understanding of what he's trying to do from the time the ball is snapped. And his technique is actually better than coming out of college. And even in preseason, there were a number of the technical issues that would cost him at times. I think he's cleaned a lot of that stuff up. He looks different from the technique standpoint on top of it. So when you put all that together and then you add in, you know, there's times that I kind of scratch my head on what exactly the Patriots are trying to do on a concept and the spacing that's there that doesn't necessarily allow Drake or any quarterback to, you know, to fully have success, you know, with what the concept. So you put all that together, and that's what I'm seeing from Drake Maye, is that he's making good decisions and he's consistently getting his eyes in the right spot. And when things aren't clean, you know, he's still doing something good with the football. And so you put all that together, and you know, I've been really surprised. You know, and I'm one that, you know, I'm never afraid to say, hey, I didn't necessarily see this coming out of college. Yeah. Because in college, you get what you get. Like, you don't know who a player is or if they can be better at the NFL level or any of that stuff when they're in college. So you have to go off of what you saw. And, you know, his senior year at North Carolina, or I mean, his last year at North Carolina, you know, it was like the technique wasn't there. His feet were all over the place. He looked uncomfortable in the pocket. He missed a lot of easy throws. And so you go off of that coming into what I've seen this year. And I've been really, really impressed with, you know, the complete package that I've seen from Drake Maye, you know, here early in his career.
Kurt, when you say lack of spacing in the play design, take us into what can Alex Van Pelt do better to maybe set Drake Maye up for even more success so far in this rookie campaign? What do you see play calling wise that the Patriots can be better at for this kid?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about spacing, the whole goal in playing offensive football, specifically when you're playing against a zone defense, right? Man-to-man is a different beast, but when you're playing against zone defense, is you're trying to stretch defenders, right? You're trying to figure out how much space a defender can cover, and then our goal is to put pressure on him or put him in conflict, I always like to say. So, for instance, if there's a guy that's, you know, that has to cover the flat area of the field, and there's only one guy, so like a cover 2 defense, and the corner has to come down and cover the flat. the goal is to put somebody over the top of him and somebody underneath him and make him make a decision. Are you going to go deep or are you going to go short?
Mm-hmm.
But the key for a play designer and a key for a quarterback is there has to be enough space between those two receivers so that if the defender stays low, I actually have enough room to throw it over the top of him. And so that's kind of a simple analogy of sometimes when I watch what New England does, I say to myself, well, that one defender can cover both of those guys.
Right.
And so Drake's trying to read over there, and he really doesn't have a shot unless the underneath guy's open, right? Unless the defender just falls off and he can throw it to the underneath guy. He doesn't really have a shot at the over-the-top guy because there's not enough spacing between the two. I did a little piece on my YouTube page, QB Confidential on YouTube, a couple weeks ago on just a few of the concepts, 5 or 6 of the concepts from one of the games of New England. And it was kind of based on that same thing. And some, I believe, is more play design because I've seen it happen a few times. Yeah. And then other times I wonder if it's more, player related where they just don't stay true to the details of a play. Right. And then they get too tight together. And then Drake doesn't have the spacing to be able to create, a throw. And so that's basically, what we're always talking about is creating spacing, right? Is trying to create, I always talk about it. If I can force a defender to cover both width and depth. So instead of just letting them, cover width, one way or just cover depth, I'm trying to get them to cover both. So they have to move sideways and they have to get depth. Right. Or we can beat them. And so a lot of that spacing and play design and detail of plays is all with that mindset of how do I conflict this guy, whoever that is on a particular defense, conflict him as much as possible and as quickly as possible, right? Mm-hmm. That's what helps the quarterback. The sooner I can read movement of a defender or lack of movement, right? If I'm throwing a flat and the flat defender doesn't move, okay, that gives me an indication. If I'm trying to throw a flat and something over the top and I get the flat defender to move really fast, that gives me a quick indication of where I go with the football and a quick read. And so to me, a play designer should always be trying to do that. I'm always trying to influence guys to get my primary guy open and to give my quarterback a read as quickly as I possibly can so he can either work through his progressions or he can get the ball out of his hands really, really fast.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, I've been really impressed with his accuracy, too. So if the play calling, to your point, I mean, if we could scheme guys open even, this kid can put it on the money where it needs to be. I want to talk intangibles with Drake Maye because I always felt like, Kurt, you led the league in intangibles. So as I sort of look at this kid, even hearing you talk about how he cleaned up footwork, how his processing seems much faster than what you saw in college to now, he clearly has a work ethic. I mean, intangible-wise, leadership, work ethic, are you seeing these things in Drake Maye as well?
Well, no doubt. But again, I'm seeing it from afar. I know him a little bit, but I do know some people that know him very well. And everybody that I've talked to that knows him very well has said and told me during the process, hey, this guy wants to be great. This guy has the work ethic. This guy has the mindset to be everything you want in a franchise quarterback. And so, you hear that already. And just watching him in interviews and hearing him talk, it sure feels like that on top of what everybody said. But then, yeah, when you see it, play out the way that it has, and you see that, like you said, he must have put in some work. Mm-hmm. He seems to be a student of the game, seems to really know what he's doing at a young stage. Those are great signs, with the fact that he does have physical gifts. He does have physical skills. And I'm always going to argue the other things are more important. But if you can have all those other things and the physical traits on top of it, that's what every team is looking for. That's what every team wants to have. And it sure seems like, he's got, a lot of things in that bucket, and especially early in his career.
What's the best way to build around it? Because, look, I mean, right now, you look at this roster, Kurt. The Patriots, it's a Christmas wish list in terms of what they need. You need offensive linemen. You need wide receivers. Hell, you need playmakers. How do you sort of build around this guy? I mean, is it all the above? What's the most important in terms of building around him, building blocks wise? Where would you start?
I think as a quarterback, we always want to start with skill players. And, so for when I was with the Greatest Show on Turf, or even when I was in Arizona, I had some great playmakers around me. And so, I always like to think that direction. But I think a lot of it can really depend on who your quarterback is and what he does well. So, let me look at Cincinnati. We can look at Cincinnati, and I know, one of the first things that jumps out is you say, gosh, can we just give up Joe Burrow an offensive line? And I agree with that. But I think Joe Burrow is a guy that processes information extremely fast, maybe as fast as anybody in the league, gets the ball out of his hands. So in a situation like that, which again is, I reference back to myself, that's what I did really well. And so for me, I could work with an offensive line that wasn't great, because if I had playmakers, I'd get the ball out and we would have success based on dealing the football. So, if you have a quarterback like that, I don't mind going and getting a Jamar Chase, going and getting one of these top-notch, wide receivers, because your quarterback understands how to use them, and you understand how to use them, and you can cover some of the things on the offensive line. But if you don't have one of those guys, and even if in general we're talking about it, I think, I go and look at the Detroit Lions, and I say to myself, they took the approach that, they got all kinds of playmakers now, but they took the approach that we are going to build the best offensive line in football. Mm-hmm. And we are going to make the life of our quarterback easier in one way or another. And for them, it starts with running the football, taking the pressure off Jared Goff. So Jared Goff has played great, but he's throwing the ball 25 times a game, 18 times a game, low 30s every game, and he's able to have great success because they have great balance. Mm-hmm. And, the more I watch teams, the more you watch teams that get to the playoffs and have, runs in the playoffs, it's the teams that have great offensive lines. And that, to me, is where I would probably start. Okay. Believing I can scheme up my playmakers to get open against man coverage. I can have good schemes against zone coverage, where I feel like just about everybody that's in the NFL, if you can do the right thing and catch the ball, we can have success against zone coverage based on scheme. And so I really think, if you could build it a certain way, that I would build offensive line first, and then fill in the gaps and try to maybe steal some of these, really good playmakers a little bit later in the draft where I can, just because I've seen that work. Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts, there's certain limitations that he has as a quarterback. Right. But when you give him an offensive line in a run game, he's shown himself to be a really good NFL quarterback. And so when they put it on his shoulders and they didn't have a great offensive line, they weren't running the football, he looked very average. But then you put those pieces around him. And so the more I see teams that can do that and can dominate up front and can win the line of scrimmage, the easier it makes it for the quarterback. And so I really think if I was in a GM role, I would try to build there first and get some really good pieces up in front of him, and then try to find those playmakers outside of that.